Well, hello everybody, my name is Roger and welcome to my channel, Roger's Reads. So today I'm doing part 2 of my September 2018 wrap-up. Well, before I get started though, I just want to mention, for those of you who enjoyed The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee, I just received her latest book, The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy, in the mail. The book was just released. So if you were a fan of the first one, you might want to check out this one. I'm personally really looking forward to reading it, though I don't think I'm going to get to it in October. So anyway, on to my September wrap-up. So the next book that I read in September was entitled The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. So this is the first book in the Mistborn trilogy, which is an epic fantasy series by Brandon Sanderson. You know, I've kind of rediscovered my love for fantasy recently. When I was a kid, I literally read hundreds of sword and sorcery and fantasy novels, so it's kind of fun to dive back into high fantasy once again. So this story takes place in a dystopian world that has been ruled for 1,000 years by the Lord Ruler, who is believed to be immortal and who rules by absolute power and terror. His empire is referred to as the Final Empire. So in this world, ash falls constantly from the sky. The sun is glowing red and there are no flowers or grass. There are two groups of people in this world. The nobility, who is under the Lord Ruler's thumb, and then there's the Ska, it's S-K-A-A, which are more or less the peasants, and they've lived in slavery, misery, and fear ever since the Lord Ruler took power 1,000 years ago. And the Ska are often killed without cause by the Lord Ruler's enforcers or by their noble overlords. So their lives are pretty much that of constant terror. So for them, pretty much all hope seems lost. But the main characters in this story are a group of misfits who are trying to overthrow the Final Empire, and they're led by a man named Kelsier. Now, Kelsier is a legend in the underworld, a masterful thief who could pull off any heist. That is, until he was caught by the Lord Ruler and sentenced to the pits of Hanson, where nobody has ever escaped alive. But escape Kelsier did, and when he did, he then recruited the underworld's elite. So, in this world, the magic system is called allomancy and is really quite interesting. It's a system where you ingest different types of pure metals and then burn them by will. For example, you decide that you're going to burn copper. And once you do, you temporarily gain enhanced abilities such as increased speed, super hearing, and enhanced strength. Some metals allow you to almost fly through the air or fire objects with the speed and strength of bullets. So the majority of allomancers are called mistings, and they have the ability to burn only one metal and one metal only. But there is a rare and special type of allomancer called a Mistborn, who has the capacity to burn all the metals. So these are indeed truly powerful individuals, nearly unstoppable. So as we learn, Kelsier is a Mistborn, and he has brought together the smartest and most trustworthy allomancers in the area with the goal of taking down the Lord Ruler, a more or less suicidal task. So he ends up recruiting a young woman named Vin, a street thief who has been abused and betrayed by everyone she's met. But as it turns out, the girl has some impressive powers of her own, and Kelsier takes it upon himself to teach her and to help her to bring them out. But she'll have to first learn to trust, which is not an easy task for her. So the rest of the story revolves around this ragtag crew of misfits who have undertaken the impossible. So we then dive headfirst into this strange and unsettling society as we see their plan unfold with the huge question, how can you defeat the undefeatable? And what will be the price to try? So I loved this book. The world building was phenomenal, and the Final Empire had the most creative and meticulous magic system that I've ever come across in fantasy. I found Elemency absolutely fascinating, and I love the depth that the author went into in describing it. The world itself was also enthralling, with the dreadful Lord Ruler and his terrifying order of steel inquisitors, also believed to be immortal. Now, it took me a while to start this book. It's actually been on my bookshelf for quite a while. And I was kind of hesitant to start it because it's quite a chungster, coming in at 647 pages. But once I got started, I actually tore right through it. This book had a masterful, intricate plot, a group of true badasses, a powerful yet damaged heroine who turned out to be lethal to her enemies, rich dialogue and banter, an awesome magic system, and amazingly developed characters, all of whom I ended up falling in love with. You know, I love this book so much that I immediately picked up the second one in the series, and I'm actually over halfway done with it, and it's longer than this one. So needless to say, I ended up giving The Final Empire 5 stars. So the next book that I read this month was entitled The Heart's Invisible Furies by John Boyne, and I also read this book as an ebook. So this is the story of Cyril, who was born in Dublin, Ireland in 1945 to an unwed 16-year-old mother named Catherine Goggin, who was forcibly banished from her small town by a local priest because of her pregnancy. The priest literally dragged her out of the church and into the street, kicking her along the way. It is a rather horrifying scene. So you see firsthand here the incredible and harrowing power over people's lives that the Catholic Church once wielded, and how it controlled and manipulated people through fear and intimidation. So the little boy, Cyril, is adopted by a strange and rather unconventional couple, Harold and Maud Avery, who, though well-meaning, have very little feelings for this little boy and really don't pay that much of attention to him even. They even insisted that he call them Harold and Maud rather than mother and father because, after all, he is not a real Avery. So as a child, Cyril realizes that he's gay, which is not an easy thing to be in an ultra-conservative Catholic Ireland. And he is also in love with his best friend, Julian. So the storyline of him and Julian was at times humorous, but also heart-wrenching, as Cyril tries to push his feelings for his friend aside. Cyril's life as a closeted young gay kid in Ireland is very difficult. So this book then spans all the decades of Cyril's life through 7-year increments. So we experience his loves, losses, tragedies, longings, regrets, his mistakes, and all the lessons he learns along the way. So the book was quite heartbreaking at times in its depiction of what life was like in Ireland for women and gay men until very recently. It's also very much about the culture of Ireland and all the changes the country went through from 1945 to 2015, the year the story ends. So in this way, I ended up learning a lot about Ireland in the process of reading this novel. Now, I don't want to give the impression that the book was all grim and dark, because that's not the case. There are plenty of savagely funny scenes with hysterically humorous, clever, and witty dialogue. I love the clever banter between the characters and the eccentric personalities of many of them. So that being said, the secondary characters were a delight, and each of them was really well fleshed out. They felt like real people that each of us might know. Now, the book grabbed me from the first page, and it was nearly unputdownable. So I found this book exceptionally moving and entertaining, and it took my breath away at times with its compelling narrative and beautiful, expressive, lush prose. So this is not just a coming-of-age story, but also a man's emotional search for a sense of identity and country. It's about love, loss, longing, about struggling with who one is. So Cyril's character, though likable, is deeply flawed. And though good-intentioned, he does do some horrible things. and inadvertently ends up hurting people, as we all do at one time or another in our lives. So all in all, this was a wonderful, heartwarming and poignant book that I am so glad I read. This is actually my first John Boyne novel, and I do look forward to reading more by this author. So the next book that I read this month was entitled Dear Evan Hansen. So this was originally a Broadway play that I didn't see, but from what I understand, it was pretty well received. So the story follows Evan Hansen, a high school senior who has a horrible anxiety. And under the direction of his therapist, he writes a letter to himself every day that starts out, Dear Evan Hansen, today is going to be an amazing day, and here's why, ... But one day, things don't go too well for Evan when one of those letters to himself ends up in the wrong hands. And it just so happens that that classmate ended up committing suicide with a copy of Evan's letter in his pocket. So the letter in question was rather a dark letter, a letter detailing Evan's doubts, depression, and somber view on life at the moment. So what results is a series of misunderstandings due to a simple lie. We follow Evan, along with the deceased student's parents, on a journey through grief and mental health. So you see, Evan knew that the student's parents were hurting deeply, so he chose to tell them one little white lie, because at the time he actually felt that it was the right thing to do. So it was a simple lie, but a lie that grew and grew and grew, spiraling out of control until it became a social media sensation. It turned into a story that Evan could no longer put away or ignore. It became almost a mythology, and that was way past the point of going away on its own. So it became a story that Evan could no longer escape from. So because of this and his strong urge not to cause the students' parents any more pain or take away their hope, Evan tells even more lies to keep the story going, and in doing so he gets in deeper and deeper and deeper. So the book portrayed also, in a rather frightening way, the power that social media plays in our lives and how it has the capacity to cause real harm as well as promote healing. So because of this misunderstanding of Evan's lie, a boy who preferred to move through his day unnoticed and invisible is suddenly thrust into the spotlight. Now, on the positive side, Evan does find acceptance among his peers, and he's actually propelled forward with a new purpose in his life. But on the negative side, this new world of Evan's is about to come crashing down, and there is nothing he can do about it. So I ended up enjoying this book, although I don't feel like enjoying is the proper word to use for a book whose subject deals with the aftermath of suicide. Let me just say it was a compelling read. It was very much disturbing and heartbreaking at times. So the story dealt with some very difficult topics such as suicide, bullying, isolation, mental health, loneliness, and lying. But it didn't do so in an after-school special hit-you-over-the-head kind of way. That these topics were handled with dignity, I felt, rather than in a cringy way, which is unfortunately sometimes the case with heavy-hitting subject matter. Though I will say that the situation that Evan found himself in made me cringe on several occasions, but it was a cringe of embarrassment for him rather than because the tone of the book was preachy. So I felt that this was a powerful, well-told story that illustrated nicely the ups and downs of life in high school and how the course of one's entire life can change from one simple decision. So, for good or for ill. So I ended up giving this book 4 stars. So the last book that I read in September was entitled My Life as a White Trash Zombie by Diana Rowland. This is a book that Peter from Peter Likes Books mentioned on his BookTube channel, and it sounded like something I'd like. I was in the mood for something crazy and fun, and this book, it definitely fit the bill. And how about this cover? It drew me right in. I thought the cover was a lot of fun. I can get it without the glare. So, the story follows Angel, a 21-year-old high school dropout with a pill habit who lives with her alcoholic father. She's also a convicted felon for car theft, though it wasn't really her fault, and now she's on probation. So, one day she wakes up in the ER. The doctors tell her that she has suffered a near-fatal overdose of painkillers. The funny thing is that Angel remembers being in a horrible car accident, covered in her own blood, but as it turns out, there is not a scratch on her. She was also found naked on the side of the road, which did not jive with Angel's memories, though her recollections of that night were still a bit sketchy. So things get even weirder when she receives an anonymous letter telling her that there's a job waiting for her at the city morgue. So given that her life has been spiraling downward recently, she doesn't dare to refuse the job, especially given that the note warns her that if she fails to hold down this job for a month, her toxicology results will be shared with the probation officer, meaning that she'll probably end up going to jail. On top of that, she was giving a supply of energy drinks, also anonymously, and told that she must drink one of them every other day. So as the supply of energy drinks dwindled, she then receives another note telling her, if you crave it, eat it. So the thing is that recently Angel has been craving brains. During an autopsy at her job at the morgue, she found that her mouth began watering and her stomach grumbling at the mere smell of a human brain. To her, it smelled delicious. So one day, she finally gives in to her cravings and finds that eating brains gives her a rush that taking pills never did. So due to her new habit of eating brains, she can only come to one conclusion, that somehow she has been turned into a zombie. It's only when she meets another actual zombie that he confirms her suspicions. So the question is, who turned her into a zombie and why? So the rest of the book follows our young newbie zombie as she struggles with her new and improved self, falls in lust with a hunky policeman, tries to keep her secret from her loser boyfriend, gets in a couple of rows with her alcoholic father, and surprisingly finds that since becoming a zombie, she's changed more than just physically, but also has grown as a person, and now sees that there's a lot more to life than pills and booze. So it's a lot of fun to watch Angel as she learns her limits and learns to adjust to her new zombie powers. She also ends up being quite a resilient character. But life as a zombie isn't all smooth sailing for Angel. There's a serial killer on the loose who's been decapitating his or her victims and keeping the heads, which means there's fewer brains showing up at the morgue for Angel. But things heat up even more for our heroine as she and the serial killer cross paths, leading to a riveting climax. So I actually ended up loving this book. It was so much fun. I can't tell you how many times I laughed out loud. It was snarky, funny, irreverent, unique, and all around a fun read. It also had a unique take on zombies, which I really enjoyed, and even had a mystery to solve. And the story was nicely wrapped up at the end with a completely satisfying conclusion. You know, this just might be my new favorite zombie book. So this was truly a fun romp of a book with great witty banter along with likable characters, a gripping plot, a little romance, a serial killer, a touch of redemption, and of course, zombies. So this ended up being a 4-star read for me as it was so much fun. So that is it for my September wrap-up. How about you? What did you read in September? Let me know in the comments. As always, I thank you so much for your watching. I really appreciate all your support. Oh, and also if you like this video, I really appreciate if you click the like button below. It really helps me out. So that is it for this time. I will talk to you in the next video. Roger and out.